How do we dial up our relationships with our daughters? That's the topic we're going to be addressing today on Flourishment. I'm your host, Tina Yeager. Flourishment is sponsored by Access More. Today, I have with me an amazing licensed therapist named Colleen O'Grady. She is also a life coach and she is an author, and she helps moms reduce the drama with their teenage and older daughters and begin to maximize and optimize those very precious relationships. I'm so excited to have her talk about this topic on Flourishment today. Welcome, Colleen. I am so glad to have you here.
I am so glad to be here too.
So I know that some of this, even though you are a professional, you're a licensed clinician and life coach, I know some of this comes from your own experience. So tell the audience why you chose this topic of mother-daughter relationships and why it's precious to your heart.
Yes, of course. Well, my whole life, I feel like, has been about teens. So I did full-time youth ministry for 10 years before I became a marriage and family therapist. And I noticed that teens were really affected by their parents while I was doing youth ministry. And then, probably the biggest teacher of my entire life was my own daughter. And I thought it would be so easy because thousands of teenagers in my youth ministry thought I was the coolest person ever. And then I realized it wasn't naturally going to happen with my own daughter when she turned 11. I thought, I don't want to be the enemy to my daughter. I want to have a really good connection with her, but it's a lot harder than I thought when I was a youth minister or even a therapist.
I think that's true for all who are experts in parenting and with children. You find you're not the expert anymore when it comes to your own kids. So that is very, very interesting. And it's actually reassuring to those who are listening that it isn't just them. It's not just about you not having the tools or the equipment or the knowledge. It's just the natural part of individuation that makes us feel like we don't know what we're doing and our kids are rebelling against us, isn't it?
Yes, yes. In Dial Up the Dream, which is my newest book, I talk about there's a proverb that, as iron sharpens iron, so does one person sharpen another. But I found another translation that said, just like a grinding wheel, so does one person sharpen another. And so I think a lot of times we think if mothers is that we're sharpening our children, but our children also sharpen us. And it's this beautiful back and forthness that doesn't always feel great because sometimes the sparks are flying, but we become way better human beings because of being moms. And it's this mutual process.
If you're open to that. And that is the key. And I loved about your book, Dial Up the Dream, that you actually go into some things to look for so that you can be receptive and teachable as a parent and be a listener, not just a lecturer. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, I like that, listener, not a lecturer. Yes, yes. So in the teenage years, it's easy to fall into the trap of being the 24/7 monitor. And we feel, especially towards the end of junior, senior year, because we feel this pressure to get them into college or to be successful. And so we become really focused on these data points. And so a lot of our conversations are, did you get your schoolwork done? Are you studying? Give me your phone. It's a lot of monitoring. And when your child leaves home, we can't monitor anymore. And they don't have to stay in relationship with us. So there has to be something else that keeps us connected. And Sandra Stanley was on my podcast, and she talks about parenting with the relationship in mind. And that's it. the strength of our impact on our daughters is the strength of our relationship. So, one of the moms that has an adult daughter or was in college, I said, "What is the most challenging thing of being a parent to a young adult daughter?" And she said, "Keeping my mouth shut." And that mothering urge to tell our kids what to do, it just never goes away, right?
That's true. It does help to be a therapist in that respect because you learn that early on, that mantra, shut up, Tina, shut up and listen, shut up and listen. So you at least have that going for you if you're a therapist, but it doesn't mean you're always going to do everything right. I know there is a huge bipolar kind of opposite ways of looking at parenting, and people tend to gravitate to one pole or another. Either they're too permissive and they want to be their kids' friends and they don't put enough boundaries in place or enough guidance in place for their kids to make healthy decisions, or they do the exact opposite, which is more what your book is focusing on. They're hovering, they're controlling, and it's a fear-based mindset as a parent. I have to make sure they do everything absolutely right. If they're not perfect, they're not going to be okay. Can you
Right.
talk about what is the healthy balance of those two, if it is even a balance?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I would love to. I really believe that the foundation of parenting is the quality of the relationship. And like you said, that's not being their best friend, but it's not being their enemy either. So that quality of attachment is so important. In fact, they have found if you really do want to have a teen that's healthy and successful, they have related that back to the quality of the attachment between the parent and the teen. So I think moms get such confusing messages when their teens graduate from high school, right? Because they're told you just need to let go, just let go. And so, what in the heck does that mean? And it means letting go of the monitor. That's what that means. You can't when they're gone. But and the monitor, when I say that, that means the manager. We let go of managing our teens because it's the goal of a young adult, their developmental step is to learn how to self-manage. But then there's this other factor, which is why moms are so confused when they're 18 and leaving home. And I hadn't seen anybody write about this, so this is why I wrote about it. So most of your listeners have probably heard, well, the brain isn't fully developed until age 25. So, but what does that mean when our teens are 18 and we're sending them off to college? And what does that mean when they're considered legal adults? And our teens, of course, are going to feel like I know everything because I just turned 18. So, you have a role to play. So, letting go doesn't mean you don't have a role to play. You have a role to play. And it's twofold. It's that quality of attachment that takes strategy, and the other part is you're the consultant because there is a maturity gap, and that maturity gap is even though they physically are adults and look like adults and intellectually could even be smarter than us, probably are, but they're emotionally immature, and you add that into the equation. So the undeveloped prefrontal cortex means just emotionally all over the place and impulsive decisions. So that is why moms were still needed. We still can be a consultant. And I think that's the balance because you can't control them, but they still need us to speak into their lives.
And creating that safe space, that open door where they can feel they can talk to you without making you react in a way that's going to be condemning or judging. That's really important to allowing that relationship to be one that informs their decisions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think, and I think you could totally relate to this, is if I hadn't been a parent, this would have been a very different book because it would have been just do this and do this here, and here are 5 steps to this. But in the book, I really share a lot of my own experiences because moms, we love intensely, and we love our daughters intensely, and then we have a lot of fear, because we can't manage our teens on a day-to-day basis. And so what do we do with that? And, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but what happens typically when they're away at college, especially that first couple years, you might get that phone call that says, "Oh my gosh, mom, I hate everything. All the girls are really mean. I just want to leave school. I'm failing all my classes. I've got to go." And then you don't hear from them for a week. And then you're left with all this angst, and you're worried and you're praying and you're scared. And then finally they call you back and you say, "Wow, how are you?" And she goes, "Well, fine."
And I love that you have steps that you can follow, even though it's not a do this and this will happen kind of a way of prescribing what to do. They are questions that will help parents really think about where they are and how to shift their mindset and how to get through this in as healthy a way as possible. Again, this is not about perfection. This is about creating safe spaces, healthy relationships, and forward movement and growth centered ideas. So, how could people get a copy of Dial Up the Dream and your other content and stay connected with you, Colleen?
Yes. You can buy Dial Up the Dream wherever books are sold. And I know moms are busy, and so it's definitely on Audible, so you can listen to the book also. And I'm at ColleenO'Grady.com, and that's 2 L's and 2 E's. And you can follow me on Facebook or Instagram.
I hope that all of you listening were blessed by this conversation with Colleen O'Grady, and will go and look into her information. She has several titles, including her latest, Dial Up the Dream. And of course, I also hope that you come back for the next episode of Flourishment.